India should walk in her own shadow. We must have our own development model. As rightly quoted by beloved ex-president late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, India is the land of diverse culture and communities. Representation from almost one-fifth of the world must set foot on the world stage and claim its rightful place through sustainable and equitable socio-economic development and increased footprint in the global trade. Today, standing at the crossroads of being a potential superpower and providing a better quality of life for all its citizens, it is critical to engage in meaningful debate, to adopt and reinvent ideas to make sure we reach the ideal India at 100. And it couldn't be a better time to discuss when the country has recently celebrated its Diamond Jubilee for its independence. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We cordially welcome you all to Trade Winds, the annual International Business Conclave of IIFT, to experience and be part of this fruitful exchange of ideas that will enlighten the leaders of the future. The Indian Institute of Foreign Trade was established in 1963 as an autonomous body under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry to contribute to skill building for the external trade sector of India. It has come a long way to successfully develop into a unique institution that impart knowledge through research and training international business and trade. We are the only B school to have hosted the president, the prime minister, and the vice president in the same year on the occasion of completing 50 years as the vanguard of management education. Trade winds provide a platform for IFT students to interact with eminent professionals from industries as well as various international organizations. The theme for this edition is India at 100, encompassing 8 national summits over a span of 3 days. After 75 years of independence, we are now aiming at the next 25 years, which are going to be revolutionary for India, and we are now aiming at the next 25 years and discuss the same from an industry perspective. To understand the global perspective, we have global leaders who are going to join us today and over the span of next 3 days, and they will be discussing India at 100 and the perspective of how India will look 100 years from now. Very good morning and hearty welcome to everyone to Trade Wind 2022. We are very fortunate to have among us our esteemed chief guest, Mr. Gaurav Chadha, Director at Google, our Vice Chancellor, Professor Manoj Pant, and Dr. Satyendra Bhatia, Dean, IFT, are respected faculty members and students of IFT. I, Saloni Jain, am going to be your host for the evening. I would now like to request Ms. Suniti Venkat, the President of the IMF, the student body here at IFT, and Ms. Chenika Das, the General Secretary of IFT, to escort our dignitaries on stage.
He's the one you're speaking about.
Now, I would request all the dignitaries to light the lamp and mark the commencement of the event. Thank you, respected dignitaries. Today we have with us Mr. Gaurav Chadha, Director at Google and member of our board as an esteemed chief guest for the event. Mr. Chadha is a venerated alumnus of our institute from the batch of 2006. He is an industry specialist in the field of product management, outsourcing, advisory consulting, ITES, and implementation services, business development, and solution integration. He served as the managing director at Accenture prior to joining Google and has been associated with huge names like eFunds and NIIT Limited. He's passionate about technology in operations and likes to talk about consulting and its future. We are indeed very fortunate to have you here, sir, with us and would like to extend a warm welcome to you. We request you to take the floor and enlighten our students.
Thank you. Well, just checking. Good morning still. Good morning, everybody. It's a bit surreal, I must say this, that, I walked out of the hallowed portals of IIFT like 16 years ago, or around about 16 years, and I was telling the team that I've completely forgotten the geography of this place. So obviously, I'll take a tour after we are done here. But really, when I walked out 16 years ago, I did not anticipate that this day will come, that I will be back here talking to you all. So thank you for having me here today, first of all. And on this momentous occasion, as India celebrates what is called the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav of 75 years. And what I always think about the next 25 years is that we are moving very energetically towards the 100. So Professor Pant is left over. I told him I'm esteemed faculty and organizing committee behind this event. Thank you and many, many congratulations and best wishes for the event, which is obviously we are starting today, but for the next 3 days as well. I always want to talk about a little bit about the past before we talk about the future. So when I was thinking about what I'm going to share with you, I was remembering, I was still in high school when India's economy was opening up. This was back in 91, 92. We were obviously facing a huge crisis at home, and that's what paved the way for us to open the economy. There were two narratives which were floating around at that time. And maybe you can Google up, not that I'm promoting Google here, but you can Google up that. The first one was about fear. And I'll explain what I mean. There was a fear when the economy was opening up that the local companies will wilt under the pressure of big global brands and the capital that they are going to bring in. And the second one was about opportunity. And that opportunity was, hey, it's a massive opportunity that Indian middle class is offering to big international brands. There was actually a very specific case study which I couldn't find, but I'm pretty certain I read it and I remember it till date. There was one of the, I don't know whether it was McKinsey or one of the big fours or big fives actually did a study and which said that the size of the Indian middle class back then I'm talking about was 250 million people, which if you think about at that time was actually bigger than the US population. And what they said was that, big brands like Nike and Adidas at that time, if they were just to land in India, they will exponentially actually grow their business because they don't even have that much market there. And here we are actually offering them market. So, there's a big opportunity to actually seize in India for the big global brands. So those are the two big narratives which I remember from that time and which played on for a few years, fear and opportunity. If you think about it today, and I was thinking about it as I was thinking about this event, actually both the narratives haven't really played out like that. So let's talk about that a little bit. So let's first talk about Indian brands, right? So Indian brands actually continue to hold their sway over global brands. I mean, you can think about Mahindra SUVs. I mean, I was reading some report like they actually had launched this XUV 700 and it was kind of sold out even before they could actually start promoting it properly. So think about that, right? Or think about Thumbs Up. It just refuses to go away, right? I'm sure the dhaba outside IIFT still offers that. I remember that time. And actually, not even that. If you go down south, and I had a privilege of spending some of my time after I moved out of Delhi down south, there are these regional brands. I don't know if you've heard about brands like Jayanti Cola or Bovonto. These are much bigger brands, and actually they are giving stiff competition to even pan-India brands. So if you think about this, it is not just going away. Indian brands are not going away. In fact, to a large extent, it's actually coming back. I'm sure you are following the news about old brands like Yezdi and Java motorcycles coming back. In fact, I never used to drive one. My dad used to have one, right? So that's coming back. Or if you recently heard about Reliance bringing back Campa Cola, right? It's just refuses. So the point I'm making is that Indian brands have held their sway. Indian businesses have had their fair share of market success despite all of what we heard, that the fear of this huge big brands coming and steamrolling Indian businesses. Of course, this has not been easy, to be honest. All businesses, like any business actually, if you think about not Indian businesses, but any business has to invest to stay ahead. It's almost like, what you all are doing today. You're investing your time and money and your capacity here, learning new things because you want to be ahead. So Indian brands had to do almost similar to that, but they did develop a new muscle, right? Did they not? So fear, obviously, we can take that off the chart. Let's talk about opportunity for foreign players, right? That was another big, massive narrative that was going around at that time. Of course, we see a large billboards of multinationals, and most of us today, including myself, I will not deny that we are either driving a European car, or we are watching, wearing a Swiss watch, or we are bringing home some of the finest brands of television from Japanese, TV makers. Right? That is still happening. But are they really foreign brands? Just think about that. Are they really these names are they really foreign brands? I mean, again, going back in time, right from the time since McDonald's actually put aloo tikki in the burger, right, which they did for India for the first time, to big tech companies like Google, Meta, we are now localizing content. If you've been to Google, if you've been to any of these big tech companies' websites, these companies are now localizing content for regional Indian markets, not even Hindi, right? But we are talking about 15, 16 languages. So they're actually going that way. Or if you think about Amazon, right? Big, massive global brand. When you go there, what do you see? You're seeing a lot of Indian sellers there. So they're actually going out of their way to promote Indian sellers. So small to medium businesses being promoted in a global e-commerce brands. And that's not only in India, by the way. You can actually get those brands outside India too. So actually thinking about it, are these brands even global? I believe not. The global brands are actually now seeped in India as much as Indian homegrown brands. So as I said, think about the narrative which was there 30 years ago about fear and opportunity and where we are standing today. So when I look at 75 years, and in particular last 25, 30 years, is an era where Indian businesses adapted. That's what has happened. Indian businesses were able to adapt, build a muscle to protect their turf, and at the same time, global brands had to evolve to respect Indian culture and the needs of Indian consumers. So that is what has happened, let's say, till now. So then what does the next 25 years look like? Here is my kind of, I won't say prediction, but this is my hope. And that the script actually which played in the last 25 years will get flipped. Let me explain what I mean by that. How about this? That Indian businesses actually push large global brands and brands which are big, not in India, but outside India, to actually protect their own home turfs in other countries, right? Force them to do that. And Indian businesses going global and fine-tuning our own product portfolio to meet the demands of global audience. So we no longer basically just cater to this market, but we cater to global markets. And at the same time, we actually sort of almost how Indian brands were, Indian businesses were forced to adapt. We actually force much more global businesses to adapt on their home turf. Is it a pipe dream? The question is it really the pipe dream? I really don't think so. And I say that because I think people in this room, you all, are actually going to help us do that. And I'm saying this not because I am a overconfident alumnus of this institute, but I'm saying this because I'm seeing some evidence of this up close. Let me share some numbers with you. So for example, since beginning of 2021, 65 unicorns have been born in India. You all know unicorns. I don't have to explain that, right? This is that number of 65. That is about 60% of the total unicorns in India today. So in the last 1.5 years, actually, we have more than doubled the number of unicorns that Indian businesses have produced. I was reading in one of the flyers as well from IIFT, but the Indian startup ecosystem is third largest outside of US and China. So that's another thing to consider as we think about how it is scaling and growing. And the most important part for me was that the 50% of the unicorns that we have today actually have businesses outside India as well. So we are no longer making for India, but we are actually making for the world. So those are some of the numbers that kind of strike me when I think about why this could be possible. The other thing which strikes me is that if you look at even unicorns, and I'm not even talking about other businesses, but just look at unicorns, and if you look the spread of the scope of sectors that they are touching in, they are touching 56 different sectors. And it is as diverse as IT services, which it should be, to agriculture. So that's a range in which our startup system is currently working. The other important thing, which is talking very specifics, is we are seeing green shoots of Indian businesses making for the world, as I said, Lenscraft, right? Lenscart, if you remember. I was actually pleasantly surprised in my last visit to Singapore. They have a bunch of stores there. And I was told that they've actually given a huge amount of competition to the local stores there just by the way they actually approach the whole supply chain. So Lenscart is a great example of scaling businesses in a big, big way outside India. Another example, if you consider the apps ecosystem, and I'm kind of closely related to that when I work at Google, we have our own Ludo King. I don't know if anybody of you have played Ludo and you're interested in that, but Ludo King is actually one of the top 20 installed games on Google Play Store. And again, it's not just in India, but it's outside India as well. So as I said, proof points are beginning to emerge. If you look at these examples, these numbers, proof points are beginning to emerge. I hope, though, that this is just a beginning of what is to come in the next 25 years. And my fellow IFTians all here, I hope you will help us scale these proof points into what I would call as business as usual for the Indian businesses. I would like to close this with an anecdote and a question, and I'll leave that with you all today. One of the colleagues that I was speaking to recently actually reminded me of how there has been a generational shift in India when it comes to odds of succeeding and building a profitable business. It's a very fascinating journey if you think about and reflect like that. So what he mentioned was that in generation one, many, many years ago, the odds of your success was largely dependent on you having connection with the right circle many years ago. Then a few years later, or a few generations later, let's call it generation two, the odds of succeeding was not just limited to whom you knew, but also about the access to capital and money that you had. So money used to attract more money. That's what people used to say. Money attracts money. That was generation two. Generation three, which I guess part of me and some of your parents and maybe your close relatives will kind of resonate with, is generation three was the odds of succeeding also started depending upon the knowledge that you had, because suddenly everybody was interested in making sure their kids were doing well from a studies perspective, getting the right amount of education. So education and knowledge became another lever of kind of succeeding in life. So the odds of success moved from the connections that you had, from money that you had, to the knowledge that you can acquire. If I think about today, actually, generation four, actually it's become even more democratic. And you will relate to it that generation four, where we are now today, is not limited to connections because of transparency and governance. And part of it is because of technology. It's not about connections anymore. It's also not about money anymore because you can raise the capital easily today. If you want, you can raise the capital. It doesn't have to belong to a few people. It is not even limited to knowledge because capability is no longer now centered in a few institutes or few institutions. You have plethora of options. I mean, look at, I tell my kids these days that when I was passing out of the school, there were only two choices you could make, or rather three choices. You were either a doctor, you were an engineer, or you were nobody. But that is no longer the case, right? You have so many options today. So the knowledge is not a preserve for a few institutions or few domains. So that has also changed. So what is generation four then? Generation four is more about ideas. And go back to the discussion we were just having a few minutes back about ecosystem, the startup ecosystem. So generation four is all about ideas. So now the odds of succeeding actually depends upon the depth of the idea and the scale of the idea that you may have. And incidentally, while we haven't done like serious study about it, but one of the things which we found very fascinating when we look at the apps ecosystem is that most of the apps are actually used in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And I bet if you look at the founders of some of these apps, they would have actually come from those cities. We haven't done some analysis, but I'm pretty sure if somebody was to do that analysis, you will find that, which means idea is no longer a preserve for certain segments of society. Ideas can come from anywhere. So that is generation 4. And like I said, our startup ecosystem is a very, very good evidence of that. So friends, esteemed faculty and fellow participants, this is where we stand at 75 years. I've played the picture from now to the past 75 years into the making of India. And as history has shown, we have risen beyond fear and we have participated in opportunities. So the question therefore is, what does the next generation shift looks like? Let's call it G5. Well, 5G is the flavor of the season. I just reversed it and said G5. What does G5 look like? Would it be idea industrialization? It's great to have idea, but do we really have it in us to scale that idea and take it to a point where we can scale our unicorns into actually global businesses? That is one way. Or something which fascinates me the most, since at least I've joined at Google and before that as well, but more now I see very closely, is can we leverage the diversity of India to build businesses for multiple markets? Because remember, anytime you go out, and I speak to a lot of customers and consumers, what fascinates me is there is nothing called one India. There are so many pivots to India. India bases education, India bases money available, or the per capita income. India bases the towns the people are staying in. So there are so many pivots to India. India bases languages, cultures, customs. So we have so much richness here. So can we use that diversity that we have to actually build products which can be fine-tuned for different markets? Because not many companies are able to do that successfully. So, as we think about this, what does the next generation therefore looks like? So that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the question. And I hope, and I sincerely hope, that you all will pause and ponder over the next 3 days as you participate in some of the sessions. And I went through a pretty exhaustive list of sessions around finance and startup and so on, and ask yourself and find questions, answers to the questions over the next 3 days in this wonderful event called Trade Winds. What will the G5 look like? And I will again emphasize, it's not so much about what it will look like, but also about how it will happen. And there is another fascinating pivot to think about as you spend the next 3 days of what do you want us as a country to stand for? If you think about Japan, for example, Japan is known for its efficiency. You think about European cars, German cars, it's basically has a demonstrable value. What is that demonstrable value for India? And that's why I'm hoping that over the next 3 days, as you engage with other business leaders and other discussions that are going to happen, you will spend time debating and discussing of what G5 looks like and how you all will participate and how India will participate in developing the G5. So like I said, I'm really grateful to be here, and thank you for your time, and really humbled, and thank you for the generosity of having me here. And the last of it is that may the tailwinds, not the trade winds, but may the tailwinds be with all of us for the next 25 years, and hopefully see you all on the business side of the house and interact with you as you basically take us to the next level in India. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your experience, your idea, and leaving us all with a question that we will surely ponder upon. I would like to request Dr. Satendra Bhatia to come up on stage and felicitate Mr. Gaurav Chadha for his words and extend a warm gratitude. Thank you so much, ma'am. You may get seated, please. Now I would like to request Dr. Satendra Bhatia to come up on the podium and share a few words with all of us.
Mr. Gaurav Chadha, all the students, very good morning to all of you. Trade Winds is an event that has been exciting us since many, many years. I can say many, many because I have been here for quite some time. So I have seen how this event has been organized. And today I was very keen to hear Mr. Chadha. He is our board member also, and I have had the occasion to hear his insights during the board meetings. I just know very crisp points he makes. And I think as far as time is concerned, no one adheres to the timing more than anyone else. So I was very keen, and I'm glad that I heard him. It is a perfect beginning to one of the most important events of the Institute. I think students do a wonderful job of organizing. You get the best speakers and speaking on the most relevant topics that are useful. I think he's already set the ball rolling. The G5 can have many connotations. I think each one of us can make a different picture. But at the end of it, whatever that picture is, it has to make us look great. It has to make India look great on the global stage. Today I was just reading a news which actually upset me about one of our pharmaceutical companies where it is suspected that the drug that they have sold have killed almost 66 children in the Gambia. And that's a huge, huge loss of reputation to the Indian pharmaceutical industry. And if there is even a shred of linkage to that event, you can imagine how much harm it will do, not just to that particular vendor, but to the entire pharmaceutical industry. And I do not think India can afford this kind of thing. And who knows, it might even percolate beyond the pharmaceutical sector. Therefore, standards and quality parameters in this G5, to my mind, have always to get the kind of priority that is needed. I remember years ago when I had joined this institute, Ranbaxy was such a big name, and so many of our students would join Ranbaxy. And then suddenly one day we hear about all the problems that they had with the US regulator, and then with the company with whom they were to enter into business dealings. And today, where are the founders? Possibly going to jail. I mean, so you can imagine how quickly the decline can occur if we do not stick to the standards that are there. Even at that time, the US FDA had said that the standards were not very high, which Ranbaxy was implementing at its Chandigarh plant. And so many years later, almost 3 decades later, we see that really not much has improved. And the pharmaceutical industry was only blaming the Western countries that they were not very happy with the kind of success they have made, and that is why these things are being said. So yes, we definitely want to paint a very optimistic picture of India, and we definitely, it is important that we remain optimistic, and to remain optimistic, all the hygiene factors, I will call them, these are really the hygiene factors, the standards, the quality parameters, the ethics. All right, we should not be entering into any contract where we know that it has any remote linkage with any kind of fraud or any kind of harm to the customer or the supplier. So these hygiene factors, I think if we do not forget, because we do tend to forget when there is some race for profitability or race for valuations when they occur. Um, these hygiene factors are forgotten. So I'll just try to say that please do not forget these hygiene factors, because in international business, these will never be forgotten by the people, and not just for the current year in which an impasse has taken place, but for many, many years thereafter. Therefore, I wish you all the luck for this event, and certainly when you pass out and join businesses, much greater luck during that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would like to invite on stage Ms. Chenika Das to extend our heartiest welcome by giving a token of gratitude to ma'am. Under the banner of Trade Wins 2022, we organized 10 national article writing competition and had a participation of more than 5,000 students. As a token of appreciation for the winners for the efforts, time, and research put in by them, we collate annual magazines that are published by various clubs and cells to honor their work. Now we have two new annual magazines coming to us. So I would like to invite on stage the infrastructure and real estate cell of IFT Delhi for unveiling their annual magazine Infrastructure 4.0.
Good morning, everyone. I am Niharika Sharma, Junior Cell Coordinator of Infra, the Infrastructure and Real Estate Cell of IFT. Infra Cell was set up to emphasize the increasing significance of the infrastructure and real estate industry in India's economy and development. The objective of the cell is to promote careers specific to this sector. On the occasion of Trade Wins, we are extremely elated to present the latest edition of our magazine, Infrastructure 4.0. The magazine consists of winning entries from students across coveted B schools in India who participated in national essay writing competition organized by IFT. We at Infracell would continue to serve the students and the college fraternity by keeping them abreast of the developments happening in the world of infrastructure and real estate. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, esteemed guests and infrastructure and real estate cell. Now I would like to invite on stage the pharmaceutical, healthcare and insurance cell of IIT Delhi for unveiling their annual magazine Infinite.
Good morning, everyone, and greetings from the Pharmaceutical, Healthcare and Insurance Cell of IFT Delhi. I am Mayank Ranjan, and I'm extremely proud to announce the release of our annual magazine, Infinite, edition 2022. This year, we received enthusiastic participation from the students all across the country, from top educational institutions, in the form of groundbreaking and revolutionary ideas in the field of pharmaceuticals, healthcare, and insurance. The theme for this year was India at 100. Students provided their views and opinions on critical topics concerning the development of the pharma and healthcare sector in India for the future, such as the PLI schemes for API and KSM production in India, the HDI increment through improvement in healthcare and services, and many such more topics. The magazine contains a compilation of ideas from the brightest minds of the country, and we at PHI announced the release of the magazine with infinite possibilities for India. Thank you so much.
Thank you, esteemed guests and pharmaceutical, healthcare, and insurance cell. On behalf of IIFT Delhi, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to everyone for their gracious presence and sharing their valuable time for us. Your words were enlightening, and we are all gratified by your valuable presence and guidance. Now, I would like to request all the dignitaries and faculty members to move to Sanjeevni for refreshments.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.